and start some of these introductions. So welcome once again as we continue our Kentucky Summit on the economic roles of freight modes. This is our fourth session that we're about to start. It's on economic development is the topic. But as we go forward, just a simple reminder, please keep your microphones on mute when you're not speaking. Turn camera on or off. The speakers and everybody will be have their cameras on. But if you have a question, and especially for this session, we're going to be doing some breakout groups. So I encourage you to turn on your camera when we go into our breakout groups. Meeting chat, if there's a question during one of the presentations, you can always enter a question into the chat box. We're continually monitoring that. You can always use reactions. I'm not sure if anybody's actually used a reaction button yet, but it's still there. So I encourage you to, if you need to raise your hand, ask a question, get a little smiley face or a thumbs up, that's always encouraged. And as always, up at the top corner where you see the view, you can, change around and find a view platform that's, or a configuration that's most convenient to you. So without any further ado, start our presentation on economic development with Riverports. Today, we're privileged to be have on the agenda Christina Slattery and Kevin Johns. Christina is Executive Director of the Office and Business Community Services there with the Cabinet for Economic Development within Kentucky. She will be discussing the first half of the session. She'll be running through some of the existing initiatives and some of the items that Kentucky is currently doing. And then we'll go to Kevin Johns. He's Economic Development Specialist here with Metro Analytics, an author, a music aficionado, and former Director of Economic Development for Austin, Texas. Once we go through those two presentations, we'll be doing a short breakout session. After the two presentations, I'll go through and preface the three questions, and then we'll break you guys out into groups, give you about 16 minutes and pull you back in and discuss some of the items that we talked about within the different groups. Each group will have an assigned moderator and an assigned note taker. So you won't be there just left to your own devices. We will orchestrate this whole thing, and you should be Zoom technology withstanding. You'll be pushed into your groups, and then after 16 minutes, you'll be pulled back in. So without any further ado, I'll turn it over to Christina. Christina, I'll stop sharing so you can start sharing your presentation. There we go.
Okay, you guys see and hear that okay? And
Perfect.
Dave, we have about 15 minutes. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for asking me to participate today. David and I had a great brainstorming session last week to talk about what could be helpful. And so really, I'm taking it at a very high level to talk about our cabinet at, here in Kentucky for economic development, what we do, our successes and challenges. And, I really do look forward to hearing your all's feedback in the breakout session. So I'm going to start by just introducing our team. normally we'd be all out in the state and hopefully meeting with everyone. But as you all know, this is the world that we're in. So our cabinet, it's a state agency. We are the smallest state agency located in Frankfort. We have 66 employees, led by Cabinet Secretary Larry Hayes, and the business development department that I'm a part of is led by our commissioner, Jeff Taylor. So longtime Western Kentuckian, spent a lot of time with TVA and doing some private consulting before he started with the cabinet under the Beshear administration. I am our executive director of business and community services. So really, I lead a team of project managers who support companies in Kentucky that are already here and are growing. And, there's an aspect of our business which is recruiting new industry to Kentucky. So we do a little bit of both. Really, the primary metrics for us are attracting new investment, jobs, and announcements to the state of Kentucky. And we'll talk about where we stand on that here in just a few minutes. But that's my role, is supporting those companies and the communities of Kentucky. We represent all 120 counties, and we want to work with communities to be ready for new investment within their city or their county. To talk a little bit about the structure of how the project management team works. So we have the state divided in these local workforce areas. So we have used those to divvy out how our team covers the state. We have Corky Peak, that if you're in Western Kentucky, Corky, I'm sure, that covers the western side of the state, has been with the cabinet a long time and directs our efforts there. We have 3 ladies actually that cover the Northern Kentucky and Bluegrass region because of a lot of the activity there: Annie Franklin, Brittany Cox, and Elizabeth Bishop. Kentuckiana Works and Lincoln Trail region, Martin David Jacobs, Andy Lutner. And then our Eastern Kentucky region is covered by Brooklyn Leap and Becca Burton. So we've got our team that not only is regionally focused, but is focused on certain target markets. So for example, one of our project managers is a food and beverage specialist. She works really closely with the Governor's Office of Ag Policy, with KDA and other agencies to really be an expert in that field. Other target markets for us are agritech, healthcare, automotive, aerospace, metals, chemicals, and then high-tech projects. So I will say this is our structure, but for us, this is a relationship business, and really we let the relationship guide who's going to work the project. So if a project manager has a particular relationship with a community or a company or a consultant, then that's how we approach that. I should also mention that we've got a office in Tokyo and in Hamburg, Germany. So we do have an international presence as well. And that, that initiative is led by Craig McKinney, who is based out of Kentucky. So, if you ever have a need for support, in Europe or in Japan, we've got staff members there that are boots on the ground telling everyone about Kentucky. So I believe that last year, 35 to 40% of our new announcements were from foreign direct investment projects. So this is just a really critical part of what we do. Another part of our research team, or of our business development team, is the research aspect. So Christopher Snyder is, I believe, on the line with us today, but is the director of our research department and has a team of very talented analysts that focus. We've got a staff economist, we've got some workforce expertise and some database expertise among that team. Really, any task that you give them, they've got great tools and curious minds to be able to to really help us understand what's driving our business. We are here to help with reactive type requests. So if you need workforce data or you've got a question about a certain industry, this team can handle that. But what Christopher has really done is moved us into a more proactive approach, where I'll talk about in a little bit. We're doing more targeted marketing and lead generation through our research efforts. So I just wanted to take a minute to talk about 2020 and what our team has been focused on this year. We have a young team of project managers, and really that's by way of career and just in age. We have a younger group that I think our most tenured project manager outside of Corky in Western Kentucky is 2.5 years with the cabinet. So we've spent a lot of time doing training and development this year, a lot of community visits, obviously all of this virtually, and training on finance and utilities and the like. Every Monday we have a meeting with a community or a partner organization. So that could be a utility, that could be city or county officials, local economic development agencies, some of which are probably on here today. So we've just, as you all probably are too, are trying to stay in touch. Since we can't be out and about in the state visiting, we've tried to focus on transitioning that virtually. Even though we can't do our plant visits and tours, we're trying to make sure we're still available to support existing industry and convert that to a virtual platform as well. As I'll talk about later, existing industry are really the biggest drivers in Kentucky for our economic development growth. We track where our leads come from, and local partners, like many of you on this call, economic developers, and our company contacts are our number 1 and 2 lead source. So because of the relationships that you all have developed locally, that's oftentimes where these projects that we work are coming from. So as I mentioned, we do have a target market strategy, and we've spent a lot of time this year having our project managers really develop that expertise. And if you haven't seen our targeted market presentations or webinars, they are posted on the cabinet's website. We have done one already on healthcare, automotive, metals. We've done an international foreign direct presentation, and then coming up in January will be one on transportation and logistics. So those are about 30 to 45 minutes long, and we would invite you to view those that have already aired and upcoming. And then we've done things like, many of you probably saw Tesla very publicly looking for a new home for a manufacturing facility. We don't make that very public, but we do go after those types of opportunities. We developed a targeted web page just for Tesla that was password protected to sell Kentucky, and that type of recruitment can be duplicated for other projects, OEMs and companies, and we've done that multiple times. So we've got a lot of really great resources within the cabinet and a strong team. So let me talk a little bit about our metrics and where we are year to date. So as I mentioned, our primary mission is attracting new investment to Kentucky, and we have been able to announce $2.16 billion in planned and ongoing investment thus far this year. That is over 6,000 new jobs that will be created. These are not part-time or temp positions. These are full-time Kentucky resident positions. And then 145 unique projects, so unique announcements. So one company could have multiple projects, but that's 145 thus far this year. I've received a lot of questions about really where we are year to date compared to last year, just considering what all has occurred in 2020. So we ran some numbers, and this is, I just looked at January to November of this year compared to last year of where we were at the same time. And it was interesting to see that on the announcement standpoint, we already are almost where we were this time last year. So by number of projects and activity, there's been a good deal. And we'll talk about some of the opportunities that have emerged during the pandemic here shortly. But a good number of announcements. You'll see here that on the jobs and investment front, we are trailing behind where we were last year, and that's to be expected. But quite honestly, it's not as devastating as you may imagine. We've still had a lot of success. So this is a breakout of by region where some of the announcements have been. So, typically you can probably imagine a lot of announcements here in the Northern Kentucky area and in around Louisville, Lexington, Bowling Green. It's had a lot of great activity in Western Kentucky, some in Northeastern Kentucky. So areas of the state that you would imagine have had announcements, but we are proud to say that we've seen activity in all regions of the state thus far. One thing that I'd like to highlight, and this is really a product of the research team that I discussed earlier, is this new and expanding industry dashboard. This is embedded within our website, and happy to share how to get there. But we really value transparency as an administration and across state government. And if you ever are curious as to what announcements look like in the state or in your region, we update this dashboard monthly, and you can pull this based on a month, year. I believe it goes back to 2013. You can look by county. If you wanted to know, for example, how many Japanese projects were announced in Western Kentucky in 2017, this could be customized to build that report for you, and can be exported in an image, or I believe in an Excel document. So we just wanted to highlight that this information is out there if you're ever looking for current statistics. So announcements by industry, these really are reflective of what our target industries are in Kentucky. Leading the way this year, manufacturing is always king in Kentucky. We've got over $1 billion in announcement just in manufacturing alone. A lot of opportunities this year with food and beverage. I think COVID has definitely highlighted some of the gaps in the supply chain there. So distribution, food and beverage have been hot, along with chemicals and metals. So I'll take a few minutes. Many of you are familiar with this process already, but if you're not, to talk about what our process is like. Sometimes there's mystery around, where do leads come from, and how do you work them, and how does a project end up announcing in Meade County or wherever it may be. So I wanted to just take a second to talk through that. The expansion process. So a lot of times this starts with a lead. Many times those leads pre-COVID were through facility visits. So our project manager that covers a certain county spends a day in the county visiting with different companies alongside the local economic development agencies, and through those conversations and visits learn that there's an opportunity for growth at that facility. That turns into a lead. So a company may say, well, I've taken on additional customers. I need to add additional lines, or I need to hire additional support to support that customer. That allows us to enter some sort of a due diligence phase where we kind of vet out that lead, negotiate what needs to happen to get the deal done, and then, at the end, make an announcement of some sort. So very similar through the attraction process. So I'm seeing that my time is running very short. So I'm going to kind of roll through here some of the resources that we have that and ways that we can help. So number one, we can help you sell Kentucky. Transportation and logistics and where we're located are a huge part of what we're telling companies about, that you can be, anywhere within a day's drive of 2/3 of the U.S. population. You all know those statistics well. So we can help tell that story. We really like to highlight that we have, globally connected through airports, through air cargo, rail, and our navigable waterways. So this is a major part of why Kentucky is getting looks, is really just how we're connected. Incentives. On our website, you can find this document, Incentives at a Glance, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Our incentives don't generally apply to communities. They're for companies that are expanding, adding jobs, investing into their facilities, and they're oftentimes in the form of some version of a tax credit. And I will go through those. Transparency, again, I'll just hit on it again. If you want to know how much a company received in tax incentives, or when, or how much they recovered, that is all available on our website at any point for you to see. These are public tax dollars, so it's out there for you. The cabinet does have a build ready program. So a big part of the site selection process is finding where you're going to locate. So you need so many acres with a certain utilities already provided. It may need rail, it may need river. The build ready program allows for a community to identify a site in their community that is pad ready, that has all the proper zoning, that has resolved environmental issues, so that when a company comes to look, that there's already a place identified that makes sense and is ready to build. We have a Zoom prospector database of all sites and buildings in Kentucky. So this is where we start. The local communities manage these sites and buildings databases. So if you have sites or buildings in your community that aren't on Zoom prospector, they're likely not on our radar for selling, to potential customers. So I did want to highlight that service. And variety of workforce services for hiring, recruitment, and training, both through just support and through incentives, and then a small business focus within our cabinet as well. So I will, David, I guess I'll just wrap it up. I don't want to run you all too late. Maybe we can get more into the breakout sessions.
No, that is great. Thank you very much. We will, I guess we'll go ahead and transition. I'll let Kevin start to share, but Christina, there was one question that came in during your presentation. Can you help connect industries to create opportunities, like having truck, rail, and shipping work together for mutual benefit?
So if I understand the question correctly, we do a lot of times what we are doing is just connecting. Our team is not the expert in maybe any one thing. We know a little bit about a lot of different topics. So we do often connect companies together that we think would be great partners and would work together and could use each other's products or services. We work very closely with the transportation cabinet, energy and environment. If we feel like there's an opportunity for other expertise to get brought in, our goal is to make the company more profitable and successful in Kentucky, and the value that these different partners add can really do that. So I hope that answers the question.
I think so. And I think to kind of relate, especially the last part of your presentation, Christina, some of the stuff that we're doing within the Riverports project to kind of help identify some of those locations. The purpose of a session like this to talk about some of those incentives and something that's going to be beneficial to the Riverports and the community at large. So So yeah, I think that all ties together. So thank you very much, Christina. I'm going to turn it over to Kevin now. And Kevin can, he's going to run through just some of, you know, building on what Christina just talked about, but talking about basically some of the questions, you know, kind of phrasing it around some of the questions that we're going to have in the breakout sessions. But, you know, moving forward and thinking about some opportunities and some outcomes that we can have from specifically from this study, but at large as well, around economic development and some ideas and concepts. So I'll turn it over to you, Kevin.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, David. And Christina, that was a brilliant presentation. Thank you. It's so good to see a state doing so many great things, and you all are really very comprehensive and doing a great job. I think that, like you, I would like to talk a little bit from the high-level economics, and then try and address in this short presentation just some ideas that the state might consider to give a tune-up in light of the post-COVID future that we face. I think everybody knows a little bit more about their own community, but I think in 2020, Kentucky is going to be faced with at least a $240 million, almost $250 million deficit in taxes. And 2 years ago, I think the level of poverty was 700,000 people. So when you look at a whole inland port system and an opportunity to ramp that up into a prosperity engine for the state, it you know, allows you to kind of look and begin to imagine at this point in time how you can use it not only to run better as a port system, but also how it can be used to improve the host communities, the communities that the ports sit in. And one of the presentations earlier talked about the hinterlands. But having been the director of economic development for cities and counties, I know how important the ports are and how important it is to have a series of partnerships and strategies to grow more resources with the ports, because you can then provide new revenue streams for the growth that is mutually beneficial. So I'm going to quickly share the screen. I think, is that what I'm going to do here, David? And we'll see which is the presentation. We're going to try this again. It didn't show up in the presentation department here. There we go. Just a minute, please. Christina, while you were talking, Google shut down briefly in Atlanta.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. I had some kind of situation happen here. I don't know what the problem is, but okay. So I'm gonna see if you can. Does this show up? Can you all see this yet?
Not yet.
Not yet.
All right, let me.
Do you want me to go ahead and share it, Kevin?
Please, yeah, just
Okay.
let me save us a little time.
Okay. You can just tell me when to advance.
Yeah, David's a great quarterback too, so, or a point guard in the case of those of us from Kentucky.
Yeah, well, I'm no good at basketball, so that's probably a bad analogy.
Well, let's just say that you can quarterback.
All right.
I think, again, at the higher level, much in the way that we're looking at how to strengthen the Kentucky Riverport, strengthen Kentucky with the Riverport economy. I wanted to look at three things: different kinds of public-private partnerships, maybe some tweaks to incentives that we used in Austin, Texas that were very effective in terms of software, and then some strategies. But the goal would be to take a fresh look at what potential new revenue streams could be tapped in light of the economy that we're going to face this next year. Stronger return on investment, that is, measure the performance, measure it differently though, not just jobs and taxes, but also in terms of the elimination of poverty, the increasing family disposable income, the amount of new taxes generated by the governments themselves, but take a fresh look at a more holistic approach. And I think equitable economic development is going to be very important for the ports, for Kentucky, for the country. And you'll see that in all of the infrastructure and funding mechanisms that are going to be coming out of Washington, we're going to be talking about equitable economic development. I think that's very important to plug into any new concepts. And then, of course, to strengthen the Riverport system in the economy, you're going to have to take a fresh look at how to be stronger in recruitment and new capital, human capital. People always talk about the importance of increasing the real estate values and attracting the tax base, which I realize is very important. But companies are attracted to human capital as well. And that reverse brain drain is a way to strengthen Kentucky's economy around the ports. So go ahead, David. I'll try and go a little faster now. This is my favorite Albert Einstein quote: "You can't solve a problem on the same level that it was created. You have to rise above it to the next level." I think that you've got an incredible port system. You've got a great Kentucky cabinet, economic and transportation. And so how do you make that go to the next level, even though it's doing great now? Next slide, please. So in terms of future-proofing the economy, the first question, there's 3 questions that are kind of on the table. The first is, how can you better coordinate with the river ports from the state level? And one best practice might be to use televised and social media forums, much like we're doing here today, but directed to the general public. That would be to raise people's awareness of the great things that are going on, but also involve them in the decision-making that's certainly to come down the pike fairly soon. And lastly, to persuade investors to participate financially. I think it's very important that when everybody's all on the same page, companies are much more likely to expand and to be attracted to communities. I think it's important to look at increasing the size of matching state grants and performance measures for the port modernization, especially in light of the life cycle of so many of the pieces of infrastructure. At the same time, partnerships with the cities and counties, with community improvement districts, tax incremental finance districts, public improvement districts, and the like, as well as attracting private sector, will make it possible to increase the state grants, but also get more from them. The third kind of an idea is based upon the programs that Christina talked about, maybe begin to offer a portfolio of technology and small business innovations to the communities and to the ports in which where they sit, whether it's sensor technology or it's communication technology, whether it's entrepreneurship training, but to be a more aggressive outreach program in the communities themselves focused on technology. The fourth area is, I think it's critically important that when you have an economic engine like this port system, that you take a fresh look at connecting education to the economy. And I think you can do that in a number of ways, but you see certain places like Germany, Israel, Singapore, every year they get the business community together around certain sectors, and they meet with the education folks, and they build a curriculum to create career paths for that are $100,000 and up. So workforce is, I think, very, very important. Take a fresh look at how that works and how it could be tuned up with the business community, rather than wait for people to be adults and retrain them. The last item in terms of how to better coordinate with Riverports perhaps is to advance partnership with the Department of Agriculture county agents. Now, this is just an idea, and it's from experience that I've had working with rural communities. But the Department of Agriculture county agents are usually the go-to people in a lot of the rural communities. And so I think this offers the potential for CED to have more boots on the ground. Go ahead, David. So new revenue stream strategies. If you capitalize on new revenue stream strategies, you get new business, you get more revitalization, human capital, you have a global effectiveness that Kentucky wants, that Kentucky really should have. It's got a great track record so far. I think it's $800 million worth of development of 5,000 jobs already this year. So, but how do you build on that? How do you accelerate it? Well, one idea is if you want to rapidly accelerate the investment of infrastructure, then I think it is a good idea to begin to look outside the government resources. Kentucky is very dependent on federal dollars. I think one of the top states in the country that is dependent upon federal dollars. But I think this is a good time to invite private infrastructure companies to future forums and to begin to get them involved to find out how you can use their money, other people's money, how you can backstop it so that your investment with them is safe, but that accelerates the revitalization of the ports, the modernization of the ports. The next is new revenue streams, increasing the recruitment effectiveness to revitalize local tax bases and the industrial parks. You want to attract federal funds, and to do that, you're going to have to increase your share of everybody in the United States. All of the places, all of the states are going to be after the new infrastructure dollars because there'll be a scarcity of that. How do you do that? Well, one way is to have a vision that is compelling, that has two parts to it. One is that it's a way to generate new revenue as a basis for leveraging new matching resources to the federal dollars. Instead of just traditional matching tax dollars, look at incentives, fresh incentives with port user partners. That is the companies that work with the ports, to have them tutor children in poverty as long as they have contracts or are working with the ports. Tutor them in high-paying careers, also reduces long-term government expenses in the heavily funded police, courts, police, public health, housing, and social service delivery sectors. So the governments, if they have reduced demand for these services, have more money to spend, more money to put into matching resources. So it's an idea that has multiple benefits, but not too many communities have looked at eliminating youth poverty as a mechanism for reducing government expenses and creating new revenue streams. But in fact, it's a very, very strong one. And last, based upon the success Kentucky is having in its leadership, in one of the case studies at the end of this PowerPoint, there's a case study on the top economic strategies in the southeastern United States, and Kentucky is rated very highly. But I suggest that Kentucky consider a multi-state port network. To get more federal dollars, you have to show that you're doing something that no one else is doing, or at least that you're very competitive. And the St. Lawrence Seaway-like partnership comes to mind, because a lot of the Ohio River and Mississippi River projects otherwise are going to be competitive with each other. But if everybody's pulling together, much like was done between the United States, Canada, and all of the states that were along the border, it resulted in 50,000 jobs being created and $6 or $7 billion of investment being specifically directed to that area. And I think that some type of a vision for creating a port system that is both Kentucky based, but also includes the surrounding states might have some value. David, we'll go to the next one. Incentives. I talked probably more than I needed to about incentives. I think that I'll just quickly go through that. My experience here is doing 22 incentives for companies in Texas, and we had a 239% return on investment, and all of the companies were approved, and it included Apple, Facebook, Samsung, Visa, Merck, Athena Health, a lot of high-tech companies, but also manufacturing companies, which is the bread and butter for Kentucky. I would say that the incentive system that is in place in Kentucky is a good one. But I would add that you might want to look at the return on investment software like Loci or Envision Tomorrow, which tells you when you have a break-even point. It tells you what is the platform for how much money you're investing, what is your return on investment in taxes. That is very important to eliminate the economic blind side of projects. Also, it's very important in the next item, which is transparency. You don't want to be criticized constantly for giving incentives when in fact they're generating what you want to get out of them. So using the software also allows you to be very transparent and show not only how much money you're giving, but how much money is being returned to the tax base, how many jobs are being created, what the kind of jobs there are, all of the things that you would want to share with the community and be proud of. The equitable economic development, I think, does have to do with if you're going to modify incentives. Right now, the incentives are pretty traditional and they work well, but I would add a concept of incentivizing companies in the port communities and in the contracting to give them bonus points if they would incentivize, if they would tutor the children in poverty for high-paying jobs while they have their contract, usually 10-year contracts. And again, the ROI for that is very, very important. And I can vouch for the fact that companies, when they know you're doing this and you're creating Einstein projects and you're creating human capital and a fresh look at workforce, they are attracted to that. Companies want to go where they have good labor force. And as we know, with automation in states like Kentucky, which are manufacturing based, you have to diversify the economy. Leveraging private investment into the port and port hinterland regeneration. Again, that goes back to inviting in the global infrastructure financing companies. I think it's important to reach out to the private sector as much as possible now, because as the US economy begins to look at infrastructure banks and more private sector investment, because they don't have scarce public resources, it'd be good for Kentucky to get ahead of the game there. And lastly, leveraging public funded infrastructure contracts. In fact, with potentially trillions of dollars of federal infrastructure dollars to be released to competitively rebuild ports, I think it's very, very important. In fact, almost it would be irresponsible not to, but to leverage the infrastructure contracts, whether it's for the construction companies themselves, but it's also for the engineering and the architectural and the landscaping and the financing, and get all of those contracts to produce more for the communities in which they're in. So it's not just port building, it's community building. David, I'm trying to speak like I'm from New York and move fast, but again, this is the important question for the metrics. How do you measure performance? And Kentucky's doing a great job with business income, jobs created. Here's a quote on Kentucky announced $9 billion in corporate expansions and new location projects, 2017, and a commitment for 17,000 jobs. This year is another 5,000 jobs. So there's a lot that's happening. But if you were going to tweak it and you were going to show return on investment, next year I would look at the number of persons lifted out of poverty. I would look at increased family disposable income. I would look at equitable economic development and the ROI that benefits to the cities and counties that are paying for all the services to support people in poverty. If the people in poverty, if the number goes down 25%, there's a lot more money. Taxes can be lowered. And measure the taxes generated to local governments from the port expansions and modernizations to find direct fits for those. And lastly, just the city planner in me wants to measure happiness. And I think it's very important that citizen satisfaction be a part of this Riverport system, knowing that they're a part of something that's special. David, I think there may be one or two more that I can fly by. These are some case studies on the things that we've just discussed. Brookings Institute did a study on four different cities, big cities using incentives, and this is their take on it. It also shows you the best practices within that and some highlights that are pretty interesting. The second, the National League of Cities, is on how equitable economic development, how that works with Black Lives Matter, with the kind of things we're facing with inequities. I think it's important that the port system really get ahead of the game on this, just as I know the state economic development has already done that. The state has got a great incentive program and a great program for small businesses. This is the 6 states with the best ones. There may be an idea, a kernel of ideas in there. And the last one is the top 10 rankings on incentives, where Kentucky shows up, by the way. And then if you have any questions, the next slide is just contact information. And thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you, Kevin. All right. So with our time remaining, we're going to come through and you'll see how relevant Kevin's conversation was to exactly what we're going to do next. We're going to come into our breakout sessions. So here's your 2-minute warning here, Haley. So a really quick overview of the breakout sessions. We're going to break into a number of different groups. We're going to cut it a little bit shorter just because of the time, and we want to come back together. But within each group, team member is going to be able to take notes and kind of moderate this process. You don't have to do anything. You'll be dispersed into your groups, and then you'll have a 1-minute timer and pulled back in. So physically, you guys shouldn't have to do anything. You'll be, again, separated into a number of different groups. But once you get into your groups, you'll be able to see the questions that we have in front of you here. How can economic development better coordinate with Riverports? What are those opportunities? Some of the incentive programs that could be added or modified, and some of those metrics used in Kentucky, how they help identify performance. So directly, some of the items that Kevin just went through. So we, Christina provided what Kentucky does now and a backdrop of what is being done. Kevin presented some ideas and some thoughts across the industry. So I will now ask Haley just to break everyone out, and I encourage you guys just to be interactive with the breakout sessions. And again, we will pull you guys back in at 4 o'clock. Thanks. All right. Thank you, everybody. Bill, where'd Bill go? Bill's over on this one. Oh, Bill, yeah, Bill Kinserly, apologize that you got cut off during that comment. I will circle back to you here in a minute, but we just wanted to take a moment with the remainder of our time and just allow some of the note takers and moderators from the various sessions just to kind of chime in maybe on one key item that you heard that could be of that's of interest or of benefit to the group. So I'll just take one from actually from our second question, the incentive programs, how could be added or modified to benefit development. One of the comments was just how it's calculated. Just kind of that calculation process was of interest, just a little bit of transparency and underneath a better understanding of how some of the calculations are done. So I'll go around. I got to expand my thing. Okay, Jimmy, I just saw your hand fly up. So Jimmy.
Yeah, just in the presence of time, I have one that was really good. One of our members has actually worked both for a port authority and for the economic development side of things. So it was an interesting comment that the business retention and expansion programs, like meeting with companies and generating great opportunities for businesses to be introduced to the ports. So as from his perspective, when he was on the economic development side, he did not have a deep or clear understanding of all of the opportunities in freight and product movement or in sourcing those products with customers. And he thought that a potential solution, and this was after discussions, would be, an educational element where the ports can provide a little bit more understanding of what they do and what they can provide, and where the economic development folks can be brought in for a deeper understanding to help them resource their products. So I thought it was a very good discussion. It was a little deeper than that, but in the essence of time, that was generally what we got out of it.
Nice. Let's see, who else we got? Frank, did you have one?
Sure. We had a couple at, Kevin, you'll be happy that we were talking about the pathway for careers and recognizing that how do you get skilled workers into the economy, and that where's the opportunities in Riverports to do that. And we also talked about the opportunities for trucks and train and Riverports to be more cooperative rather than competitive. And the example came up of, there are homeless people living outside of a stadium that are starving, but that during a game, there's a lot of extra food left over. It's not that we don't have the food, we just can't get it to the people who need it. So there's a quick summary from our session.
Great. Let's see, I think Tony
was in my session.
Oh, Tony was yours? All right.
Yeah.
I apologize. Let's see, I'm trying to get back to my list. Anybody else want to offer one up real quick?
We almost got into our second question, but one thing I was going to mention was talking about that. What are some of the key things that could be modified? And I really grabbed onto what Kevin John said about implementing some programs in the local counties and cities around port facilities to mentor the next generation of workforce, even at the high school level. Those that aren't deciding to go to college, preparing them for high-paying jobs at port facilities is a very good opportunity. And we've done a program like that. We've implemented in another state that it was very successful, and working with the Department of Education and Business Development. And so I think that's a great idea. And I think that is, a low-hanging fruit that could be implemented in helping impoverished children, or even just people that are very interested in working in a blue-collar environment that's a high-paying blue-collar environment.
Nice. Want to jump around? I think Lindsay, Kevin, were you guys in a group?
We only made it through the first question, but we got a lot of good feedback. The main topic was Riverports need help dealing with regionalism, and what does that look like? Is it marketing and coordinating with nearby Kentucky Riverports, or is it a multi-state effort? Do we co-market? Just to help dealing with that, because we pointed out that there are 4 ports closely spaced together in Western Kentucky, so that is something that they are dealing with.
Awesome. Thanks, Lindsay. So I'm not sure, did I get all the groups at least some kind of chime in? Am I missing anybody?
Ask Tom or Dave, who were in the group with me, David. This is Kevin. Ask either Tom or Dave had some good ideas.
Oh, Tom.
Number one. Yeah.
Tom Klaus, yeah.
Yeah. Tom?
Yeah, so David's suggestion was to develop and distribute clear, easy to understand visual dashboards that capture the value and the volume of port activity. He felt like that would be a good, be beneficial for the ports.
That's interesting. So it's almost, and I'm sure everybody here was at the last session that we were talking about, where you're coming through the market data and some of the stuff from TransSearch and everything. So that's interesting, because that kind of plays right into what we're doing with the TransSearch data and cutting in and talking about the value and the commodity tonnage, you know, and looking at some of that. So that's interesting. Okay. No, thank you, Tom.
Let me just add 2 cents to that. I think we were also looking at the value, not just in what goes through the port, but also the value to the community in which it sits.
Okay.
And perfect. So, you know, in one way, it's kind of like an electronic marketplace for everything that the port does or impacts, becomes a positive influence. It becomes a brand for the communities in which they sit, that this is part of their prosperity. So the value was not just limited to the cargo, that incredibly important, but that they looked at it a little differently. I believe that's what David's intention was.
Yeah, let me just quickly add on to that what I was looking at is also just to look at, say, for the commodities moving through, not just the value of the commodities themselves, but how much additional value the farmer or the miner was able to receive for that commodity by moving it by vessel or by barge, as opposed to moving it by rail or truck. Because again, the cost of transportation factoring into how much a product is worth to the shipper is going to be key.
Yes. Very interesting. Thank you.
And again, just real quick on that visual dashboard, the key thing is so much of the decision making for how much public investment goes to ports is made by people who are not technical, not necessarily economic development experts. So having something that's very easy to understand and intuitive can really make a big difference there in terms of not having to explain the intricacies. So something that's, again, very intuitive. That's all. Thank you.
A one-pager that National Waterways Foundation does for a lot of the state members, a pretty cool economic tool, and also shows some of those features. It's a little dated, but something like that would be helpful, I think, like a profile as we start to develop things more.
Perfect. Yeah, so
and you'll see an example of that if you haven't seen it before in tomorrow's funding presentation by Deb Calhoun. She has the Kentucky one in her presentation, but there's one for a lot of the surrounding states as well.
A solid segue. Well done, James. So with that note, I will thank everyone for their involvement, and thank you to Kevin and Christina for presenting. Very informative, good information. As always, we'll be summarizing a lot of this information, and it will be available, kind of the synthesized results from this will be available on the in the memo at the end, and on available on the project website. I see Haley threw the project website out there. So if there are any questions, feel free to reach out to, my contact information is out there on the website, so you can reach out and, contact me or shoot me any questions or what have you. So, but in the interest of time, to make sure we don't get cut off by Zoom, I will go ahead and finalize this meeting. And again, thank you everyone for your participation. I greatly appreciate everybody's input, and I hope you have a great day. And we will see you tomorrow, first thing in the morning, with Jimmy and that funding conversation. So
okay,
we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Thanks.